Good afternoon, one and all. I consider this is a privilege to talk to Mr. Santanu Bhattacharya, especially on this special book on pure love. While I was going through your Insta profile, I have seen that you're holding that book and saying that only I can tell this story. And the book that you had written, which was much proclaimed, was One Small Voice. And in that book, you were talking mostly about the social and political and even the secular India. Uh, but here, it is all to do with intimacies and love from a pure perspective. So I'm just curious. I just want to know that what inspired you or what pushed you from inside to narrate the story of pure love.
I think every book has its own subject matter, and as an author, especially of a novel, when you pick up a subject, you have to do justice to it. So, One Small Voice was all about, like you said, it's the erosion of secularism in India. It starts with the demolition of the Babri Masjid, and then the huge socio-political, economic changes that India has gone through in the last 30 years, and how young people have been dealing with it. This one, Deviants, was a completely different subject matter. I wanted to look at kind of the homosexuality over the last three generations, the generation before me, my generation, and now. So essentially, at a time when homosexuality was treated as a completely very taboo, but it was still not talked about. There was a lot of silence around it. I think for my generation, the silence went away, but the noise that came was very worrisome and very troubling. We became very aware of Section 377. We became very aware of being outed on the internet because, in my generation, we got the internet. And then suddenly videos could be taped and uploaded and you could be outed to the world. So there was that experience. And then I wanted to talk about the post decriminalization experience and how it is to be a young queer person today in India. And so I needed to come at this book from a lot more intimate lens of what this person is feeling rather than a more external lens, which I think was my first book.
That's a very interesting stand to talk about the history of queer community in India from an intimate perspective. Because generally, whenever we talk about queer community, we talk mainly in terms of movements, rights, etc., but not from the perspective of love. In the book, you have spoken about the intergenerational trauma, or that's running through the entire family. So, can you explain more about it? So, how this particular trauma has some role to do with a person who has his identity as a queer?
I think it's a very strange feeling. So, in the sense that if there was somebody queer in your family, of the previous generation, which was the case in my case, I did have an uncle who was queer, and while there was a lot of how do I put it? There was a lot of assurance in knowing that somebody like me exists, even though we weren't talking about it at all. There was a lot of assurances in knowing that he exists, and therefore I have permission to exist. There was also this whole kind of fear that I don't want to become like him because at that time in his life he was everything that he was doing was wrong in the eyes of society. So it's this kind of weird love hate. Do I draw inspiration? Do I draw assurance? So there's a lot of kind of trauma I think that's carried over from one generation to the other, especially if you've known somebody queer. And it doesn't need to be a family member. It could be somebody in the neighborhood. It could be your friends, a friend. It could be somebody elder that you encountered in your life when you were a child. I think there's just a lot of kind of that fondness for that person, but also not wanting to become like that person because they're apparently setting all the wrong examples for you. And so I wanted to capture kind of some of that friction of love and hate, assurance and inspiration in this book when telling the story of three generations.
The other two generations have. It's mentioned that they have gone through a lot of struggles. Okay, inside the family, the internal struggles, and from the society in general. But there is this very interesting guy called Vivan of the Digital India. You're mentioning it about Silicon Plato of India, who is actually the coming out, or maybe the possibilities of online relationships, and even the digitalization, is used a lot by this particular character. So my question is that to what extent the queer people or queer persons in today's world, this so-called digital world, is making use of this digital platform, not just for relationship, but for so many other things. So what are your observations on that?
So I wrote the book because of Vivan.
Okay.
Because I've been sitting on kind of the experiences of me and my generation growing up for a long time. And knew I wanted to write about it, but something was stopping me. I didn't want it to be all about kind of, my life. I don't like memoirs much. I don't read a lot of memoirs, and I definitely didn't want to write about myself. And I also knew that I did want to explore kind of the previous generation, but I wasn't being able to find the right format and the right, way of telling the story. And then when I was promoting One Small Voice, I came across a lot of very young queer people in different cities of India. And that got me really interested. And I realized that, their experiences are so different from when I was growing up. And that got me, I got really excited about this project, and I wanted to tell this story almost led by Vivan and then going back 2 generations. Um, how are queer people using online spaces? I think we're all using online spaces. Queer, non-queer, straight, gay. We're all using online spaces for dating, for intimacy, for everything. You have a question, for forums. There are online discussions. We're having more online discussions than we're having offline discussions. In real life. So in that way, I think online's almost become an extension of ourselves. In the queer world, it becomes even more relevant because you can be anonymous, which is, I think, still quite a big prerequisite for queer interactions. Not everybody is comfortable putting themselves out there right away. There are needs of privacy. There are threats that you need to encounter and you need to think about. So I think it gives us a certain sense of anonymity, but it also helps us to really reach out and make community. You could be chatting with somebody in a different city or in a different country in a way that your surroundings are not allowing you to. Having said that, we know there are huge risks. You could be outed. Your data is being sold. All our data is being sold every single minute that we are using our phones. And with AI, I think there's an avenue to manipulate our need for intimacy and make us pay for it. So I think there are risks that we need to be aware of, and we'll have to see where this world is going in terms of AI online spaces. But I did want to capture some of that as well in Vivan's story.
So the internet or the digital technology shows us a world which is possible in many different ways. So which is possible, in many different ways. So there is this phenomenon called cure brain drain in India. So we have been seeing that many queer people in India are leaving out of the country or migrating from India for so many reasons. So even though the digital platform is actually helping them to be here or satisfy many of the things, but why is this happening? So I know that you also have had gone outside India and had a lot of experience, and I've also seen your photo in BBC, so lots of experience. So what do you think? Because we know that the migration and the youth is a major research topic even, and even a social issue as well. So what do you think about this cure brain drain?
I wasn't aware of this term, so
Okay.
thank you for educating me. Um, I think anyone who does not feel so there are 3 main reasons for migration, right? I mean, super simplified, but one is if you're living in a very um, physically unstable world. If you're from a war zone, you need to flee if you're part of in a war zone or in a civil war situation. The second is economic migration. If you just really need to make more money in a way that the country that you live in is not allowing you to. So, we see a lot of economic migrants moving out so that they can make money and send it back to their family. The third kind of migration is, I'd say, more social migration, if you feel uncomfortable in the society that you live in, if you feel like you're not being able to fully express yourself, if you feel you have a uh, threat to life, threat to existence, if you feel like the legal structures are not supporting you, um, then you look to migrate. And I think that um, it's not just queer people. I think in the last few years, last 10, 11 years, I think a lot of minorities, I know a lot of religious minorities who have left India. I know of a lot of women who have left India because they don't feel safe and they feel like they can live a more free and open life in another country. And of course, I know a lot of queer people who've left, among them me being one. Even though I left, I came back, I left. So mine is not a very typical brain drain story. But yeah, a lot of people very purposefully leave that, I'm done with this country, I'm now going because laws in other countries support me better. And it's as global citizens, I think it's everyone's entitlement and choice. If you can make a better life, we're all looking to make better lives for ourselves at the end of the day, for ourselves and for our children and for our loved ones. So if you can make a better life happen for yourself wherever in the world, if there's a place that supports you better, then sure, why not?
That's a reality. Um, see, many of the reviews of these books, the comments that are there, in the internet about the book, talks about the emotional depth that you have written for all the generations, the gay men's in all the three generations. So you said that you have written the book for Vivan, and even I know so many Vivans, around us. But how were you, this is also a question of out of curiosity. How were you able to identify with gay people who lived in the 1970s and they were struggling and dealing with the taboos of the society? As a storyteller, how could you do that?
I think the act of writing fiction is to be able to imagine realities for other people. You create characters and you put yourself in their shoes. Some of it is research, but also when you're writing fiction, the research has to come to an end at some point and your imagination has to take over. So some of it is just that. Um, but I did have, you know, an uncle, like I said, and there was some of his life that I did want to talk about because his life went so unacknowledged and unrecognized, and then he died. He was quite young when he died. That there was always that need to bring him back to life on a page in a book in some way. So I did kind of lean in on his life quite a bit. Um, but I also spoke to a lot of gay men from who are now in their 60s, in their 70s, to understand what their experience was like, um, and yeah, just kind of gleaning from what they were telling me. That yeah, yeah.
Okay, it's a personal question. Um, your parents look so nice and cute and very supportive, in photos. So I just, and even you have mentioned, in your post that your mother is your mentor and soulmate. So would you like to say more about that and how supportive and how happy all of you are? And what is their inspiration for you as a writer and also as a person?
Lots to unpack. My mother and I and my sister, the three of us have always been very close. My sister and I are less than 2 years apart, so we've almost we've grown up like twins. And yeah, so when I told my mother about myself, I never really had a doubt about her not being able to process this. I'm very, very, very lucky. I'm very lucky that my mother, my father, they've always put their children first over anything else in society. And they're very traditional people. My father, not so much, but my mother, comes from that school of women who followed all the rules, ticked all the boxes, kept everyone in the family happy. So her liberalism and her progressivism is actually even more impressive. It's easy to when you're a rebel in life, it's easy to break the rules. But when you're not a rebel in your own life, then it becomes very difficult to break rules for your children. But my mother's really done that, and I have so much respect for her in that respect. My father is an atheist. He was a communist in his time. He still is a communist at heart. He's very progressive. He's always been. So I don't think he struggled much with this at all. Like he's like Oscar Wilde was gay, Tchaikovsky's gay. Now my son is gay. Fine, or go live your life. So yeah, but I've been very lucky. Um, Even recently, I was talking to a 21-year-old who said that when he came, and he didn't come out, he was outed in school because somebody made a video and posted. And then when the school principal called his father and told the father about him, the father is in the police. So the father dragged him home and took out his service revolver and pointed it at him and said, "I will shoot you right now." And this is a 21-year-old, right? So these people are much younger than my parents and me. So, I acknowledge that I'm very lucky, but I also always say that no one should look at my parents and think this is what it is like for everyone. They can be role models, but realities are very different. Yeah.
That's true. There are a lot to ask about it, but I think we'll have to get some questions from the audience as well. Anybody would like to talk to Shantanu about the book or the Cure Love, whatever that we have discussed right now? Any questions? Yeah. Yeah, she has a question.
So I was wondering about
The mic close.
obviously queerness is very much, I'm not saying it's completely related to sexuality, but it is very much about sex, who you want to have sex with. So do you think there is no space for an erotic or in sort of those stories in itself that, especially for queer people, but also for any sort of lust or anything like that? And do you think that that's sort of like a part of what's that we don't have this sort of revolution of acceptance regarding queer people in itself?
Sorry, I only partially heard that. I think I might be going a bit deaf. But did you say that, so because queerness is so closely related to sexuality, do you think we need to have more acceptance of that sort of sexual need?
Yeah, so sort of like sexual desire in itself is sort of such a big taboo in India. No, everyone's, men, women, everyone's. And so because of the lack of spaces to kind of express your sexuality, even in movies, there is just like nothing like that. There is no erotic scenes, there is no lustful scenes, nothing like that, or even sensual. So because of that, is that part of like why there is no revolution of acceptance in itself about queerness?
That's a really good question. What do I think about it? I think that because I do agree that the queer existence, a lot of it is defined by sexuality. Even though there are queer people now, like people who identify as queer but not as LGBTQ, as not as lesbian, gay, trans. So there are straight people now identifying as queer, which is something I need to unpack. I'm not 100% on board, but I think a couple of things. One is that there should definitely be space to talk about sexual desire. That it needs to be acknowledged. I think there is a lot more of it among younger people. I think the apps are facilitating it in a big way. Almost kind of, if there's one thing good about the apps, it is letting us say that I feel desire, I want someone in my bed, I want to have sex, right? So that's what it's doing. I do think, on the other hand, that there is a risk of queer existence being defined by sexual desire, which is happening a lot now in mainstream media, where you see queer people and they all look wonderful, they all have beautiful bodies, and they're all hooking up with each other, and that's suddenly what queer people do. We're just hooking up, and we all have great bodies, and we all look amazing, but there's so much more about the queer existence. There's a legal question, there's a social question, there's a question of companionship. As I age, I'm starting to ask what it means to age as a queer person in a country very far away. What it means to decide not to have children, what it means to all of the stuff that comes with aging. So I feel like there are so many questions and so many lenses you can put on the queer existence, whether it be young, whether it be old, the middle ages, the legal question, whether you're partnered, whether you're single, what's your relationship to your family, what kind of communities are you building? What if you're not that flamboyant? The other risk is people think we're all flamboyant, right? We all sound the same. We all crack the same kind of jokes. We all wear the same kind of clothes. There are all kinds of queer people out there. And I think you have to start putting the queer lens on every aspect of life. There's a long way to go. So in short, the answer to your question is, yes, we need to acknowledge sexual desire, but we also need to kind of open up that space and go beyond sexual desire and talk about other aspects of queer existence.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shamil. So I was wondering, like, you were telling that, like, you are studying 3 generations. Your generation as one, and the other generation, the new generation. And you are seeing a progressive growth in the attitude of people towards queer. But
sorry, could you hold the mic closer to your...
Sorry, sir. Is it clear now?
Yeah.
Okay. So you are seeing a progress here. But on the other hand also, like 3 days ago, 4 days ago, the Trump himself is telling like there is only 2 genders. And someone from the church is telling Trump that, like, please have mercy on sexual minorities or gender minorities. So how do you see these things?
And that is why you're right. And that's why I would never get complacent about any sort of progress that we've made, because I think we're in this very weird space where we're kind of going forward, coming back, whether it be queer rights, women's rights, minority rights. We think we've made some progress. Then there's one political party or one political leader who comes and suddenly, it seems like we've receded again. So I would never get complacent. And I think every generation has battles of their own to fight. And, this is kind of our generation's battle to fight to make sure that whatever we have achieved, I mean, there's still a long way to go, but whatever we have achieved, we can actually hold on to those and we don't lose those.
Thank you. We had a wonderful session, so I would like to conclude the session by hoping that we'll have more voices from the queer community, and the queer literature also something that we need to, have to be publicized and to be encouraged. Would you like to have any advice or suggestions for the queer writers per se?
I mean, I can only share what I was thinking when I was writing. And I'd just say that kind of get personal. Think about your experience. Think about people and their experiences. Because sometimes, as marginalized communities, we feel the need to talk for everyone. We feel the need to have these overarching narratives about this is what a queer person in India feels, right? This is the queer rights movement in India. And I had to really unlearn and kind of really simplify that narrative and be led by these 3 characters, because there is no way one person, we are very diverse and we are very big, and there's all kinds of us out there, and there's no way one writer can ever do justice to all of those lives. So we have to kind of pick up the thread from somewhere and then follow that thread, and then whatever story that leads us to, we have to tell that.
Thank you. So we hope and wish that Deviants will get translated into Malayalam as well. Yeah, so that all of us can read. All the Malayalis can read it in Malayalam, our own language. So thank you so much.
That would be such a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Santanu, and all the audience for the questions and also for the active listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Sri Santanu Bhattacharya and Dr. T.C. Mariam Thomas. That's the end of the session, Deviants, the Queer Chronicles. The next session here is Blood Song, a thriller. And for this session, we have Johanna Gustafsson in conversation with John Crowe Pedersen. Known as a queen of French noir, Johanna Gustafsson is a crime novelist best known for her Roy and Castell series. Her works, are critically acclaimed and have won several prestigious accolades such as the Prix Marcellus Dupola Awards. She was once longlisted for the CWA International Dagger Award as well. Published in 19 countries, she has also worked as a journalist for the French and Spanish press. Her works are now being translated into Malayalam by dcbooks. John Crow Pedersen is a writer and publisher who focuses on literary language and literary fiction in the Norwegian language. He is associated with the renowned publishing house H. Ashog.